There's no way that Harry and Meghan will have a role within William's court.
Now, on to my interesting person of the week. This week is none other than former royal butler Paul Burrell. His new book, The Royal Insider, is out now, and it reveals untold stories of his life with the royals, and he's on the line now. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hello, Jeff. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Now, firstly, this has been such a huge week. And before we get into your book, I mean, it does seem very timely. I want to scratch your brain about the big royal news. Prince Harry back in the UK, but he took a detour to have tea with his dad. I mean, do you think that this is finally it, the long-awaited reunion between father and son?
I think it's the beginning of a long journey. I think that the king really wanted to see his son and set a few things straight. And their meeting at Clarence House is a turning point. And what father wouldn't want to see his son? And more importantly, what grandfather wouldn't want to see his grandchildren? So, this is a family issue for them. And behind closed doors, I think they thrash something out, maybe about future meetings and about future visits to the UK. The king is a very forgiving man, and being the head of the Church of England, he takes that very seriously, and he wanted Harry back in the fold. I'm not quite so sure about Harry's brother.
Okay, well, it brings me on to William and Harry. I mean, it does seem more remote, the chances that they'll reconcile. Do you think that'll be a longer process for the two brothers?
I think it'll be a very long process because, Jeff, so much has been said. So much has been said in the Oprah Winfrey interview and Spare, in other interviews that Harry and Meghan have given. The problem is with all of this is that Harry is a royal prince, and he was brought up in a very privileged lifestyle, and he knew the rules of engagement from day one. It was drilled into him. He knew what he should say and what he shouldn't say. And in a way, he went rogue and went feral and pulled away from the family and said what he was thinking and said what he was feeling. Now, royal princes don't usually do that, and there is a price to pay if you do, because Harry has upset a lot of people within his own family, his father, his brother, his brother's wife, and indeed our dear late Queen was upset by some of Harry's barbed comments, which led her to say that famous quote, "Our recollections may vary."
But I mean, you mentioned earlier that it was about a reconciliation between father and son. So do you see it on a personal level, or would you buy into the idea that this, obviously people talk about how the fact the royal balcony has slimmed down a bit, the royal family could have need and use for him back, and equally the Sussex brand isn't quite what it was when he first left the royal family. Do you read perhaps more calculated motives into what's happening?
No, I don't. I think this is a personal...
None at all?
None. No, Harry will not come back into the royal fold. He will not will go back to his royal duties. He decided to leave, his decision, and as Prince Philip would have said to him, "You've made your bed, you can lie on it." I don't think there's any way back for Harry into full royal duties. No way.
Okay.
I mean, this is a short reign. Charles is a caretaker king. And it is going to be a short reign, and then Harry's brother will be in charge. And there's no way that Harry and Meghan will have a role within William's court.
Okay, now your book. Let's get on to your book, The Royal Insider, which is out now. And how did you find the experience of writing this book? Could you share a lot more personal information about yourself and your upbringing and your journey, with your sexuality as well? What made you share this now? And was it hard to write about this stuff?
Well, I've been through a lot, Jeff, in the last 10 years. Much has come my way, including cancer, including coming out with and being honest about my sexuality. And I thought it was time, especially with the death of our dear late Queen, to put some things straight. Because there's been a lot of interpretation of our monarch on the screen, and a lot's been said about her and Diana, indeed, over the years. And those characterizations haven't always sat very well with me. And I've thought, well, there's a whole generation of people growing up now who are believing what they're seeing and what they're reading. And I wanted to say, this is wrong. I love Imelda Staunton. I love Olivia Colman, but their portrayals of the Queen were off kilter. I wanted to tell people that the Queen was a warm, kind, generous woman. And through my life journey, she'd always been there for me. And why was she kind and why was she generous? Well, I've illustrated that by things that happened to me. Remember, this is my journey. It's not the Queen's journey. It's mine. It just so happens the Queen was there and she inspired me. And Diana was there along the way too. And a lot of people don't realize that I came from that royal establishment and started when I was 18 years old as the Queen's personal footman, stayed with the Queen for 11 years. She saved me from myself a lot of my time because I was young, I was naive, I'm still in my formative years, but the Queen sort of shaped me. And then I moved on to Diana later. And as everyone knows, I became very close to Diana, Princess of Wales.
Can I ask a question? And it might be a tricky one. Is a lot of listeners will probably hold me culpable if I don't. What makes you? Do you feel okay about sharing these things? It's obviously, the Queen was a big part of your life. Is there any reservations that perhaps private discussions should remain private?
No, I don't, because I'm not a member of the royal family. I'm not Harry. I'm not the future king's brother. I don't live a privileged lifestyle. I didn't have to adhere to those rules. And by telling you about my journey, I think I'm very happy about that. When I wrote the book, I read it very carefully and thought, it's a balancing act. What should I tell you? What shouldn't I tell you? And when I wrote my last book, I sent messages to Buckingham Palace and they read my manuscript before it was printed. That didn't happen this time because times have changed. They never objected to anything I said. They never said, Paul, you're wrong. You shouldn't say that. And this time around, I had to be very careful because litigation is very strong in publication these days. And I had to be very careful what I said. And so I only told the truth, but as much as I could. I couldn't tell everything because some of it isn't my story to tell. I told you things that were related to me. And throughout the book, you'll see why I illustrate these situations because it affected me as a person.
So, I mean, look, I'm a political comedian. That's my day job. I get stick online.
I get stick too.
how do you ride it out? The kind of things that people say when a book like this comes out.
I know who I am. I know what I was taught whilst I was in royal service by those two incredible, unique and inspirational women. And they would both say to me, don't worry about your reputation, Paul. That's what people think you are. Worry about your character because that's who you are. And that's what I constantly think. I don't read comments. I don't read the internet. I never see interviews that I've given. I don't do that. I stay true to myself and stay on the line and in my own little world because I know what I say is the truth.
And you've written about your upbringing. You said earlier that you entered the royal household very young and that was, I believe, in part from your mother. Can you explain to us how she was the one to secure your early career at the palace?
Yes, I can. I grew up in a coal mining community in the north of England and we were very poor. We lived in a 2-up, 2-down, no bathroom, in a Coronation Street style house, and I dreamed of escaping. But I went to catering college instead of going down the mine because my brother, my father, my grandfather, they were all miners. I didn't want that black and white world. I wanted technicolor. I wanted interesting things to happen to me. I wanted to explore the world. So when I was at catering college, the principal knew the master of the household and sent me for an interview at Buckingham Palace. I fluffed the interview because being a northern lad, not knowing not to sit down until you're asked to, and to refer to your seniors as sir throughout the interview, I fluffed it and I didn't get the job. So they kept my name on record and I'm sat in my storeroom in a hotel and the telephone rings. It's my mother. She said, Paul, you'll never believe it. A letter from Buckingham Palace has arrived and they've offered you a job as a footman in the royal household. You're going to take it, aren't you? I said, what's a footman? She said, I've no idea, but you're going to Buckingham Palace. So I did. But my mother died just before the princess. And I'm standing beside her grave and my little brother says to me, there's something I've got to tell you. I said, can it wait? Because this is a very important time. No, I have to tell you now. Do you remember all those years ago when Mum actually rang you and said you got the job? I said, yes. And now look at me. I'm looking after the most famous woman in the world. He said to me, yes, you are. And you owe it to our mother. I said, why? He said, that morning when she rang you, 2 letters arrived that morning. One from Buckingham Palace that you know about. The other from Cunard, the cruise line, offering you a job as a steward on board the QE2. Our mother put the letter from Cunard on the coal fire, kept the letter from Buckingham Palace and propped it on the mantelpiece. She said to him, if we give Paul the choice, he'll choose the wrong thing. And I'd have chosen life at sea because I wanted to see the world. And she said, well, he's a dreamer, our Paul, but I want him to go to Buckingham Palace. So my mother chose my destiny. Do you know, I told that to John Prescott a few years ago. And he said, Paul, I started my career on board the Queen Mary as a steward. If you'd taken that job on Cunard, you could have been Deputy Prime Minister by now.
Yeah, and he could have been a royal butler, I suppose, looking at it the other way. This is Jeff Norcott. I'm on Times Radio. I'm speaking to former royal butler and author Paul Burrell about his new book, The Royal Insider. You talk about the closeness of the relationship that you had with the Queen. One thing I'm wondering is how close can you be when built into the job is that deference and so on? She may have had advice for you, but was it possible for that advice to be a two-way street? How I guess what I'm saying is how real can that relationship be when someone is the head of state?
Well, it was very different to the relationship I had with Diana, Princess of Wales, because Diana drew me close to her and needed me to be around her. The Queen didn't so much. So if you ever met the Queen, and people listening to this will have, they will realize that around the Queen is an area that no one can penetrate. She moves in her own little bubble. And, you know, I always felt that I was privileged to be standing beside her. And on the occasion when her hand brushed mine, I felt a thrill. I felt this very special that I'm in the presence of the monarch. But on a daily basis, I mean, to look after her, I couldn't be bowing, Your Majesty, every 5 seconds. Our relationship was much more relaxed. And I took care of her 9 corgis, which were her beloved pets. And so if you're interested in horses or dogs, you get very close to the monarch because she will discuss all of that with you. And on
Do you remember any of the names of the corgis?
Of course I do. Smokey, Shadow, Piper, Chipper, Jolly, Socks, Diamond, and a Labrador called Jade. Chipper was my favorite.
That's good recall. Fair enough. I would have struggled. I think you got about 6 there, and a Labrador's name.
Right. Not bad.
Not bad at all. I mean, how has
all these years?
How has your opinion of the royal family changed since? In terms of the culture of the royal family, is different now. I mean, you spoke about Charles being a caretaker king. Do you think that the era, as we hope, of William and Kate will it be a very different? Will it reinvigorate the royal brand?
Jeff, it has changed. It changed the day our Queen died because she'd always been there. We expected her to be there forever. When she died, there was a change in the country, in the psyche of the country. I felt a tectonic shift of something. I didn't know quite what it was, but Charles became king. Now, Charles comes from an Edwardian Victorian court and very traditional ways. So he's adopted his mother's ways, and the court hasn't changed much. But when William becomes king, it will change enormously because William wasn't brought up in a Victorian Edwardian atmosphere. He's brought up in the modern world by his mother, Diana. So he will adopt her attitude, her ways, and finish her unfinished work. So things will change. I predict that when William is crowned, it will look very different. The coronation ceremony will look very different. And I can see the crown sat on a cushion beside him rather than him processing wearing it. He's not one for pomp and ceremony. He doesn't like dressing up. He doesn't like the robes, the jewels, and everything that goes with it. So I thought there was something quite odd about the royal family appearing on the balcony wearing crowns. It was almost anachronistic for today. It was an echo of the past. And I would like to see William reaching out as his mother did. I
Okay.
think his mother was the people's princess. William will be the people's king.
Okay, well, listen, that was former Royal Butler Paul Burrell. Thanks very much for being on the show, Paul. And if you want
You're
to get
very
his
welcome.
book, it is called The Royal Insider, and it's out now.